Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Celluloid History Life is a Mystery channel. My name is Dan Rowlands. Yes, a very warm welcome back to the UK's leading current affairs and politics channel. The channel that shirks no topics. The channel, furthermore, that is in direct competition with BBC News at 10, ITV News at 10, Channel 4 News, Channel 5 News, Sky News, Al Jazeera News, BBC Newsnight, BBC Question Time with Fiona Bruce, BBC Newscast with assorted BBC journalists, BBC Unspun World with John Simpson, UK Gold, and not forgetting Comedy Central. As always, a very warm welcome to fans of the Kildares, Rebecca Fishpond, Open Up, and not forgetting Emergency Exit. Yes, the production team dental requirements have been fulfilled. Dentistry requirements have been fulfilled yesterday. I've actually got a bit of a seasonal cold going on at the moment, so bear with me slightly, but as Freddie Mercury has reliably informed us, the show must go on. Yes. Stressful day for Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy yesterday, wasn't it? I watched Prime Minister's Questions earlier today, and I watched BBC. Well, it's part of the BBC Daily Politics programme, to be honest. And then after that, I watched today's Daily Politics programme. Vicky Young must be having the day off. I think it was a lady called Alex Forsyth hosting it today. It was a little bit sort of, I suppose it had a bit of a day after a febrile Prime Minister's Questions Day vibe, to be perfectly frank. I'll come on to some of the stuff about David Lammy's stressful day yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions. He was he had to cover for Mr. Starmer, didn't he? The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who was away, I forget where he was now. He's anyway, it might come back to me. He was abroad somewhere, wasn't he? I'm just making sure that I've done all my welcome stuff. Yes, I will come on to David Lammy in a bit. Yes, I think I put something on social media the other day. It was a bit of a critique of the Daily Telegraph. However, as I've made a point I've made before on this channel, every man has his price. Quite prepared to work for, say maybe £20 a word for the Daily Telegraph if they're interested. Although I have heard a rumour that the Times are offering the Times might be able to stretch to £35 a word. So get your offers in, Times and Daily Telegraph. You can negotiate with my people. We wait to hear from you. And I'm not sure whether the Daily Telegraph have got their own radio show, have they? But I know the Times have got a show, haven't they? Times Radio, So yeah, offers gratefully received. I'll appear on Times Radio for a reasonable introductory fee. So get your offers in there, Times. Great British institution. And anyway, yes, and on that, on the subject of the commercial jungle-like modern world that we live in, You know, obviously my people are still open to negotiations with the Coca-Cola Corporation, John Lewis, and not forgetting Marks and Spencer's regarding their seasonal Christmas adverts, which, well, they may well slot quite nicely into the middle of a Celluloid History Life is a Mystery bulletin. You know, so there we go. Money doesn't grow on trees, does it? Food does, doesn't it? But anyway, yeah. The fact that there is actually such a thing as a free lunch in literal terms, you know, don't tell anyone, you know. The game will be up then, won't it? Anyway, yeah, moving on. David Lammy, there was a big bit of a hoo-ha, wasn't there, yesterday? David Lammy refused to answer questions regarding whether the UK public are now safe from, what was the words the guy used, and the Tory fella used, I forget his name, I won't let that bother me too much. Safe from, I mean, he threw the term asylum seekers in there, didn't it? I presume. I'm entirely sure whether that was relevant, but it's a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? Along, you know, illegal immigrant, asylum seeker. It's kind of like a media buzzwords, aren't they, at the moment? So I mean, the gist of it was, could David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, guarantee that the public are safe from, you know, asylum seekers escaping from prisons? And I think the fallout from the debacle, if you like, was that there was fresh news. I think it was, to be honest with you, my research on it has been a bit superficial so far, but you know, so forgive me if I'm getting some of the facts wrong, but I believe the fallout from it was that there was at the time of the questioning of David Lammy yesterday, it wasn't quite certain whether there had been another escaped prisoner, but in other words, it wasn't widely known that there'd been another escaped prisoner, but there actually had been, and the Tory guy knew that there had been. He was an ex-Justice Minister, wasn't he? I think he was an ex-Justice Minister, and I think he was now Shadow Defence Secretary, actually. And so the point was, David Lammy basically got aerated and quite angry, didn't he? But he didn't answer the question directly at all. So the sort of the kind of the fallout from it all is that should David Lammy have answered the question more better than he, you know, should he have given Parliament and therefore the public more clear answers, or didn't he know about this extra escaped prisoner? And if it was the latter, as Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, why the hell didn't he know about this escaped prisoner, you know? And it did seem, apparently it's actually caused consternation in governmental ranks, as they say, you know. David Lammy's response and the way he handled it has caused consternation among the government, because he basically dealt with it by, I mean, I noticed he seemed to keep his cool for the sort of remainder of Prime Minister's questions, but he did sort of deal with it by a display of anger, and sort of, at one point he said to the Shadow Defence Secretary, "Get a grip, man." I remember he used that phrase, "Get a grip, man." It's sort of quite vociferous sort of display of anger that he used, and he went down the road of pointing out what terrible, terrible state that the Conservative Party left the prison system in when they were voted out of office in 2024. Yeah, there was a crisis, wasn't there? Remember when there was that awful incident in Southport, and then there was, I think that happened quite soon after. Did that happen? Anyway, never mind when that happened. But when there was a shortage of prison places, wasn't there? And there's been a hoo-ha lately about how prisoners have had to be released early to make way for criminals that have committed more serious crimes, and so it's sort of kind of this ridiculous situation where basically not enough prison places, and the prison service is in under an awful lot of pressure, and they're making mistakes, accidentally releasing people when they shouldn't. Which is a pretty, you know, I was going to say the word blooper. It's not. It's a pretty big deal, isn't it? Accidentally releasing prisoners, you know. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in that subject too much, but I actually, interestingly, one of the things that did come up today, after Prime Minister's questions on the Daily Politics show, was that there was a representative of the government. What was her name? Heidi was her first name. Oh, I've forgotten. Let me just get me notes here. That's right, Heidi Alexander. And there was a guy from there was a representative for the Conservative Party there. I think his name was Richard Holden. And Heidi Alexander at one point, actually, because they were having this sort of ding dong, you know, about, you know, the prison service. Heidi Alexander said, well, you left the prison service in a absolute, you know, dreadful state in 2024, you know, no wonder we're having this trouble, you know. And the Tory line is obviously of late has been, you know, you keep blaming the Tories for everything, and you've been in power for 18 months, you know. But at one point, Heidi Alexander from the government actually accused actually said to Richard Holden from the Tories, she was of the opinion that Rishi Sunak called the election for November 2024 in order to avoid having to deal with the crisis in the prison system. And the way, from where I'm sitting, to be fair to the government, it does seem to be that they've, you know, they're getting quite a lot of flack from the Tories for blaming the Tories for, you know, the leaving the country in a hell of a state in 2024. But it does seem to be, from where I'm sitting, a fairly valid complaint, really. I mean, how much can you really change in 18 months? And I understand that the prison system was absolutely, you know, in a hell of a state, basically, you know. And I mean, obviously, as a Social Democrat, I'm going to be biased, but I mean, you know, are we basically looking at a situation where the Labour administration could do with 2 terms, you know? I know that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is under an awful lot of pressure regarding what's going to be in the budget on the 26th of November, at the end of this month. The criticism there is that, you know, despite the fact that they're also using the old, complaint that the Tories left the Tories not only left the prison system in a dreadful state, they left basically the general economy in a dreadful state. But the Tory comeback on that point is, you know, that some of the issues that the economy's currently having to, you know, struggling with are of Rachel Reeves' own making from the first budget she put in. You know, there's a lot of flack about this raising of national insurance for employers, isn't there? Because they're saying that you know, they're saying that it's business owners and employers that are being targeted. You know, that are being responsibilities being placed on business owners and employers, and not enough on people looking for work, employees. You know, there's Labour have already implemented quite a lot of stuff for with regard to employee rights. You know, excuse me with this cold if I sound a bit bunged up, by the way. Yeah, in fact, there was a. I'm aware that we're halfway through the bulletin, and wish everybody a good Thursday evening, and I hope you enjoy whatever you're having for your tea tonight. Yes, there was a fella on the show, BBC Politics show, earlier. It's from he had an Irish accent, so I presume he's from Ireland, and he was bemoaning the lot of employers, you know, basically saying that all the strain is on employers, and how can they? That I think his main beef was with this employee rights from day one. You know, he had a problem with that, because the government have implemented rights for employees to sort of guard against 0 hours contracts and stuff. You know, and basically the sort of the way that often employees have just been treated like numbers, haven't they? You know, sort of it doesn't. You know, they're just, if someone leaves or gets disgruntled with their day job, they just think just get somebody else in. You know, and I have to say, I accept that it's not a straightforward issue, is it? This, but certainly from my experience with the workplace is that it doesn't really benefit anybody if you've got a situation where work is a sort of soul destroying process, you know, and it doesn't really suit anybody to be in that sort of trap where there's not much difference financially for working people, whether they're on benefits or whether they're working. You know, people get stuck in that trap, don't they? I get the argument that they love that phrase, wealth creators, don't they? The Tories and the right wing. So you're driving away the wealth creators. You know, if you implement too much bureaucracy to protect workers, you know. Now you could be cynical and say, oh yeah, so the wealth creators will go and take advantage of cheap labour somewhere else, you know, move out of the country. And I would add that I understand that large parts of the centre left are saying it's actually a myth about this thing, that this allegation that millionaires are leaving the UK shores is a bit of a myth, apparently. But it's I suppose it depends who you talk to, because I've also heard people on the right saying, well, no, I'm personally, you know, acquainted with several millionaires who've recently left the country, so I can tell you it's not a, you know, it's not a myth. But I accept that. You know, business is neat. You know, entrepreneurial spirit is a requirement, I guess you could say. Generally in society, you know, it comes down. Ultimately, these things tend to come down to deeper issues, don't they? We're the channel that doesn't like to shirk anything, aren't we? So, if the train of thought goes into deeper issues, so be it. You know, things like you know, what is the why are we doing here on the planet in the first place? You know, hopefully it's to try and achieve some sort of quality of life, isn't it, and some contentment. You know, to that end, I don't know why I said to that end really, but it suits the right, doesn't it, to sort of claim that life is all about, you know, life's a massive big competition, and it's like, tough cheese if you know if you're not doing very well in the competition and you're at the bottom of the so we call it the rat race. It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But you know, if you're coming last in the rat race, then tough shit, mate. You know, that's it. You know, hard cheese. That's kind of that's a bit of a sweeping way of putting it, but that's like a kind of a layman's way of looking at the right wing political theory in a sense, you know. Whereas, you know, I mean, I'm as I made to put before, I'm not I've studied a bit about Marxism and stuff, but I'm not. I don't consider myself to be a Marxist, you know, hard left socialist particularly, but well, I don't. But I suppose the centre and the left is more synonymous with ideas of equality, isn't it, and looking out for one's neighbour and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, I mean. And that's what the wonderful world of politics revolves all around, I guess, isn't it? You know, the sort of tennis match between the right and the left about those. I mean, I've generalised it. You know, I've used very generalised language there, haven't I? But you know, that's a bit of a succinct way of looking at what left versus right, isn't it? But yeah, I think this cold is slightly affecting my thought processes today. I'm not can't find my points too well in my notes this morning, but let me just see what else I've got here. Yeah, there's that. I think it's that football match tonight, the Aston Villa, isn't it, with the Maccabi. I'm just wondering, with all this pressure that the monarchy's under at the moment, I think if I was Prince William, I would consider attending that football match. I'd probably make my presence felt. You know, I very much doubt he will. He'd probably be advised against doing so, wouldn't he? But I think I've made a point in these bulletins already. I'm not excuse me. I'm not a sort of enthusiastic, you know, fanatical monarchist. I wouldn't really describe myself as that. But yeah, I think I made the point the other day. I suppose in my middle age, I suppose I can see the value of tradition, you might call it, and basically, it's not that. That sounds a bit fuddy-duddy, doesn't it? That word tradition, but I see the value of basically, you know, gradual change rather than drastic, you know, sudden upheaval, if you like. So to that end, I suppose I feel a little bit sorry for William and King Charles, you know, with the Prince Andrew debacle. It looks increasingly like the general consensus is he's probably going to have to leave the country, isn't he? Difficult to have too much sympathy, really, isn't it? But I mean, I did hear murmurings. I think I was watching a video on social media the other day that was sort of pointing out that Prince Andrew's been a bit of a fall guy for several other, or maybe more, dozens of other individuals that ought to be brought to book with due to their association with Jeffrey Epstein. There may or may not be truth in that, you know, but the idea that Prince Andrew's been bit of a scapegoat is because he's a very famous target, isn't he, if you like. Now, there may or may not be truth in that. I wouldn't pretend to be an expert on the sort of sordid, the tawdry Jeffrey Epstein tale story, and obviously I don't want to too cliche filled, but obviously the main thing regarding stories like that is, you know, thoughts with the victims, isn't it? And may their recovery from trauma be successful. God bless them. You know, that's that kind of idea, really. Yes. Let me just have a look around my notes. I know we're coming up towards 5 minutes to go now. Oh, there was a story about organised crime that's going on Britain streets. You know, stuff like selling vapes and stuff, and sometimes they're selling vapes are being sold to kids, like, you know. And sometimes these businesses are being run by people who I think, you know, like illegal, basically immigrants that are here illegally. Blimey, that's a real, you're flogging that horse in the media, aren't they? The illegal immigrant, you hear that every other phrase, don't you, in a lot of news bulletins. However, I was thinking about this subject, and although on the one hand the sort of media student, I've never been an out and out media student, but I did study a little bit of media when I did my history degree, because I basically did a diploma of higher education, which was more general humanities course, and then I specialised in history, politics and media in the final year. So it's mainly modern British history, really. But I have studied a bit of media, and yeah, as someone, the cynic in me that's interested in the big picture when it comes to, you know, the way mass media operates and its influence on the world, if you like, will just notice that, you know, basically the phrase legal immigrant is just being overused, and this can, you know, at the moment in the media. But obviously the realist in me appreciates that you can't have a situation where it doesn't matter whether people are immigrants or whether they've been living here, how long they've been living here, whether they're British citizens, whether they've got British passports, whether they haven't got British passports. You can't have a situation, sorry if I was jumbling my words there, it doesn't matter whether people have got British passports or haven't got British passports. You can't have a situation where you've got illegal shops on high streets selling vapes, can you? You know. So anyway, the BBC in their in their position as state broadcaster, if you like, have taken it upon themselves to sort of start exposing stuff like that, you know. Now, there was a time when a few decades ago, perhaps, when I was younger, that I don't think the BBC might have gone into stories like that, but they might have covered stories like that, but there would have been their sort of attitude towards the fact that it was illegal immigrants running the businesses would have been more how can I say, tactful maybe, whereas nowadays it's you know, in recent weeks, recent months, as I think I made a point in a previous video, that there's almost like a cross media consensus now that demographic, that, you know, that subset of Homo sapien, illegal immigrants, are sort of fair game, you know. Forget the fact if maybe if a, you know, former world chess champion might have to seek asylum or something like that, you know. Forget, but the fact that they're a former world chess champion is sort of superseded in mainstream media's eyes by the fact they're illegal immigrants, if you get the point, you know, or someone who's sort of formerly the world record holder for the marathon or something has found themselves on hard times and has to cross the channel, you know. It's like the fact that they're former world record holder for the marathon is one thing, but they're an illegal immigrant, you know. So, but as I've made the point before, you know, it's all just language, isn't it? At the end of the day, words are powerful. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit on this bulletin. You'll have to excuse me. I've got a bit of a cold, so I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to phone in sick, though. Sickness levels are, you know, another thing that they were talking about today, you know. Actually, yeah, that was one of the main topics that came up. I'm going to have to wrap it up soon because it's past the half-hour mark. But this idea that I think they started off with that on the BBC Politics with Alexander Forsyth today, actually. I think the first sort of caption was, is there a worklessness crisis in Britain, you know? And don't worry, I won't go too much past 35 minutes. Might even finish before, but yeah, enjoy your Thursday evening and enjoy your evening meal, as I think I've already said. But yes, is there a worklessness crisis in the UK? And I was thinking about this, and I've got this theory that really the rise of the robots, the age of the computer, ought really to be lessening the need for mundane, repetitive manual labour. Well, you would have thought so. I would have thought. Sorry, you would have thought so. I would have thought. Never mind. I blame it on the cold. However, we still seem to have this. There still seems to be this bee in the bonnet of Tories and Reform, particularly about, you know, the old Norman Tebbit thing, doesn't there? You know, blaming people being lazy and stuff, and for you know, for economy, you know, the problems of the economy and that. I mean, surely the problems of the economy are partly to do with. I mean, I've made this point before. I appreciate that wealth tax is not straightforward, and I appreciate that entrepreneurial spirit is a requirement in civilized society, you might say. However, if you've got a situation where anyone with any reasonable intelligence can see that 1 or 2% of the population have got the majority of the wealth, to my mind, that, because people are not stupid generally, I think one of the mistakes that the so-called ruling class make is to think that people are all daft. I mean, obviously, some people, a small percentage of people are daft, but not most people are not daft. I don't think. I think it's quite a small percentage that are, you know. They've even got a label for those now, haven't they? You know, sort of got a category of you know, medicalisation of that sort of thing now, isn't it? But anyway, that's a different subject. The point I'm making is that I think people are intelligent enough to sort of have begun this process of, in a sense, why should we worry too much about whether we're lazy or not, when they can see 1% or 2% of the population with all the money. And not only that, you get this idea that Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, sort of aired on pretty much a daily basis in the mass media, don't you? Mainstream media. So everyone's constantly hearing about how wealthy people like Elon Musk are, and Bill Gates and Trump, and people. Because people are not daft, I suspect, and because everyone's got a very powerful small computer at their disposal these days, I would imagine that there is a bit of a mindset out there, in some senses, in some ways, of do they think I'm stupid? You know, why should I be stressing out too much when, you know, when someone like Musk got, what is it, 85 trillion pounds or something, you know, I don't know how much he's got, but it's meaningless once you get past a certain amount of millions anyway, isn't it? So anyway, I don't want to make I know I'm going to have to wrap up the video, but I'm not trying to sort of start a revolution and sort of lazy lazy, good-for-nothing layabouts of the world unite and take over. No, I'm not trying to promote laziness, idleness, because I mean, obviously, work is good for your soul, isn't it? Being active and interested in life and helping your neighbour and all that is good for your soul, isn't it? And so I'm not promoting layabouts and layabouts and the slothful unite and take over. No, I'm not promoting that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. So yeah, maybe I should end by saying, make sure you apply yourself diligently to whatever tasks need doing, before Monday when the channel will return. Thanks for putting up with my cold, bit bunged up today. Look after yourselves. As Axl Rose has reliably informed us, it's welcome to it's a jungle out there, isn't it? And so take care and look after yourselves. Enjoy your evening meal, and the channel will be back on Monday. And I think the mighty juggernaut, the world's mightiest footballing juggernaut, are travelling down to Tottenham Hotspur, I believe, at lunchtime on Saturday. So good luck to them. And that'll be an interesting one, won't it, tonight? The football match tonight. Wonder if Prince William will be there. But look after yourselves, everybody, and I'm going to sign off. I saw the Reform trio in Houses of Parliament today. Lee Anderson, Nigel Farage, and Richard Tice. I hope they weren't planning on burning any £20 notes in front of homeless people when they left. Sorry, I'm a bit of a giddy. I think this is cold, high on paracetamol. I hope they weren't planning on burning any £20 notes in front of homeless people when they left Houses of Parliament. Anyway, we live in a democracy, don't we? So they've got every right to be in the Houses of Parliament under the democratic UK that we live in, haven't they? God bless them. Yeah, they were there in the cameras caught them a few times looking like the Three Stooges, Anderson, Farage and Tice. But anyway, as Mr. Farage has taught us, always end your political points by slowing down the pace of the words that you're using to express your points, to give the points more emphasis. Good night. Have a good night.